We advocate, we advocate for pluralism, civil and human rights in South Asia and North America, rooted in the values of our faith. Shanti, that's peace, Nyaya, that's justice, and Satya, the truth. We provide a Hindu voice of resistance to caste, Hindu nationalism, racism, and all forms of bigotry and oppression. This is the third in our hybrid webinar series, Desh-Videsh Conversations, Speaking Across the Divide. This series underscores our strong belief that the pain and suffering of one community should never be deployed to erase the pain and suffering of another, nor should memories of the distant past be used to justify inflicting pain on the current generation. Human rights is not a zero-sum game. Our first Desh-Videsh event before we formally named the series was in November last year, right in this venue, and it was titled Manufacturing Statelessness, What Next for India's Citizenship Laws. Our second event was in January, titled India's UAPA Law, Curbing Terrorism or Stifling Democratic Dissent. Today's event, Untold Stories from Kashmir, is an attempt to simultaneously engage the voices of both the majority Kashmiri Muslim community. Hold on just a second, I need to do something there. Sorry about that. Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Now, today's event titled Untold Stories from Kashmir is an attempt to simultaneously engage the voices of both the majority Kashmiri Muslim community and the Kashmiri Pandit community, who all have myriad stories to tell, which often do not find their way into mainstream media. We have a stellar panel of speakers joining us. Anuradha Basin, executive editor of the Kashmir Times from Jammu, who is personally here with us to share her views on the aftermath of the abrogation of Article 370 from the perspective of different communities. Her own newspaper was shut down and the doors of its offices in Srinagar were sealed by the authorities. Her book, titled A Dismantled State, The Untold Story of Kashmir After Article 370, is available on Amazon. She also wrote an opinion piece recently in the New York Times titled Modi's Assault on India's Press Freedom Has Begun. Ajay Raina, a documentary filmmaker, is joining us today from Ahmedabad. It's 6:30 in the morning there to talk about his film Mote Rang. I hope I pronounced it correctly, which brings the powerful story of survival of a few hundred Kashmiri Pandit families who never left Kashmir and who are now facing extinction as a community, as he describes it. The film features Sanjay Tiku, the gritty leader of the Pandits in the valley, who unfortunately is unable to join us due to a health emergency. Bill Cowell, all the way from Perth, Australia, where I think it's 9 a.m., a professional engineer and an author of several books, including 22 Years to a Kashmir Story and The Exiled Pandits of Kashmir, Will They Ever Return Home? He's joining to tell us his personal story as a Kashmiri Pandit in exile and about his search for peace and reconciliation among all communities in Kashmir. Dr. Arthur Zia, Associate Professor of Anthropology and Gender Studies at the University of Colorado, was going to join us to share her stories of Kashmiri women and children under military rule. Just this morning, we got a message that her father in Kashmir passed away, and she still tried her best to be with us. And unfortunately, just half an hour ago, she texted that she's simply unable to join us. Now, what she was going to talk about is, of course, the story of women and children under military rule. She's the author of several books and studies on Kashmir, including Resisting Disappearance, Military Occupation, and Women's Activism in Kashmir. She has also won several awards and has been featured in the Feminist 2021 a list of 100 women from the global south working on critical issues. What you hear and see today may be very personal and emotional to some of you, not only the people in this room, but also about 150 people or so who have signed on Zoom. However, our earnest request to you all is to channel those emotions into questions for our distinguished panelists, which we will take up during the Q&A session. You may write your question, people here, on index cards available in the room, which is actually every alternate row. We have a writing pad and index cards and pencils. Please feel free to write your question anytime. Please indicate your name so that I can recognize you when we ask that question. Please make sure it's addressed to a specific panelist and be on topic, short, legible. So when the Q&A segment begins, Prabodh and Sunita, who is our fearless leader, who is signing in from New York, will jointly handle questions from the Zoom audience. I would urge our panelists also to keep their responses brief and to the point, so we may take up as many questions as we can. Let's also remind ourselves that we have all agreed to a code of conduct for this meeting, which is intended to be a safe space for everyone. No interruptions or demonstrations while the panelists are speaking, and no personal attacks or other threatening behavior. Anyone who does not follow the rules will have to request them to leave the room meeting. Also, I want to underscore that what we will hear today are the personal views of our guest speakers, and HFHR does not necessarily endorse them. HFHR does not advocate or support any political formulations on the future of Kashmir. Our position on Kashmir, as spelled out in our website, is to speak up for the human rights of all communities. Please help yourselves to chai and snacks during the event. Samosas are vegetarian, and the empanadas or chicken. Unfortunately, for those of you on Zoom, screen share doesn't yet allow sharing the goodies with you all. Please also consider making a donation to HFHR to help us continue to bring you sessions like this throughout the year. Incidentally, an event like this costs about $1,000. Anyone who donates today will get a complimentary copy of our beautiful 2023 calendar with original artwork commissioned by HFHR, which are receiving great reviews and is truly a collector's piece. If you are donating, please be sure to leave your mailing address so we can send you the calendar. One final request, please take a moment at the end of the event to complete the evaluation form on your seats here, or will be posted on Zoom at the end of the session so that we can have it, so it can help us assess and improve the Desh-Videsh Conversations and also to pick future topics for such an event. Please complete those before you leave. Our thanks in advance. Hope to see you all at the next event on April 15th. I believe it's the day after Baba Ambedkar's birthday. And it's titled Have Reservations About Reservations, on the topic of reservations for marginalized communities in India and their after effects that are being felt these days in US colleges and workplace. That was a mouthful. Thank you for listening. I now recognize Anuradha Basin to come here and share her views. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raju. And she talked about, before I begin about Kashmir, I'd like to talk about the very confusing connotations of the word Kashmir. Kashmir means essentially the Kashmir Valley, but if you extend the meaning of Kashmir, it's also an abbreviation for Jammu and Kashmir. And Jammu and Kashmir, you can look at it as it stood in 1947. after which it was divided into two, two separate units. One is administered by Pakistan and one is in India. So J&K actually means Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh. The one on the Pakistan side, Kashmir side of Pakistan, Zafrabad, Mirpur, and also Gilgit-Baltistan. And people in Kashmir in the last 70 years have suffered across the board, all peoples. Whichever region they come from, whichever community they come from, they are victims and they are also the pawns. Operating within a structure that has been imposed on them by a quirk of history due to competing claims and competing politics of India and Pakistan. Decades of mishandling by both these states is what continues to fester or trigger sufferings on all sides. I'd be focusing more on the Indian side. I come from Jammu and Kashmir, and I can say with a certain authority that I have some experience to talk about it. While I don't know much about the other side, except from what I hear from different people, there is decades of mishandling, as I said, on both sides, by both states. But speaking about the Indian side, democracy in Jammu and Kashmir was always observed in breach. The politics of Jammu and Kashmir was always manipulated, and Kashmir continues to be an intractable conflict because of that. And the problem is not of today. The problem is of successive governments in the past. But post 2019, it has become even more so. A more chaotic landscape and a more irreversible landscape at that. On August 5th, 2019, the J&K Reorganization Bill came about. The J&K Reorganization Bill revoked Article 370 and dismembered Jammu and Kashmir into two units and demoted them into union territories. The Article 370 affirmed the special status of Jammu and Kashmir. So it was also a link between Jammu and Kashmir and India. In the years preceding 2019, in fact, much before in the 50s and the 1960s, it had already been hollowed out. Because 260 out of 395 articles of the Indian Constitution have already been extended to Jammu and Kashmir. But on August 5th, 2019, when Article 370 was revoked and J&K was dismembered, the leaders of the parliament, those in the government, the Prime Minister and the Union Home Minister, they promised that this will usher in democracy. Did it usher in democracy? I would like to begin at the very first step of the dismembering of Jammu and Kashmir into two demoted units and the revocation of Article 370, which raises valid legal and constitutional questions as have been raised by legal experts. Legally and constitutionally, Article 370 could not have been struck off by an act of parliament. The only body that could have taken a decision on it was the J&K Constituent Assembly, which was disbanded in 1956. And thereafter, if modification powers had to be used, those powers could have only been transferred to J&K Assembly, which was dissolved a year before in 2018. So therefore, people of Jammu and Kashmir were not consulted. When the people are not consulted in any democracy, it's no longer a democratic step, and nothing democratic can be expected. And while these actions were being taken far away in Delhi, Jammu and Kashmir was virtually turned into a prison with excessive militarization, curfew-like situation on the roads, internet banned fully in most areas, partially in others. So the conditions on ground defied any democratic principles. The other promise that the government made was that this will usher in the end of terrorism. It will provide security within Jammu and Kashmir. It will make Jammu and Kashmir more secure. Today, if you look at it, if you look at the external borders and look at internally, at the external borders, we are more threatened by Pakistan, we are more threatened by China, which till now had been silent. China used 2019 actions as an excuse to start guzzling up territories in Ladakh. Pakistan, on the Pakistan frontier, there continues to be hostility. There may be some periods of ceasefire every now and then, but things are not stable. And as far as militancy is concerned, it is increasing. In 2010, the militancy that had reduced from between 2000 and 2010, it had come down to 100 militants. And the incidents were rare and few. It has started re-emerging. And in the new phase, it is even becoming more deadly, which is the new phase post-2019. Before 2019, the militants were steadily growing in size, but they were mostly targeting security installations. They were targeting security personnel. After 2019, it is the unarmed civilians who are being targeted, or sometimes the unarmed policemen. In 2022 alone, there were a total of 29 targeted attacks, and 15 civilians were killed. Most of these are targeted selective killings. They include Pandits, they include other Hindus, and they include laborers who come to work from outside. And things may worsen even more, because as the government is now deciding to revive and resurrect a civilian armed militia called the Village Defense Committee, that is to arm certain villagers, and that is done on communal basis often, and has earlier in the 90s played havoc with lives of people. Played havoc with lives of people on both sides. Other than that, on August 5th, 2019, what the government promised was development. This will usher in development. So in short, I'd just quickly like to talk about that. Out of 334 J&K laws, 164 were repealed and 167 were adapted. Now, what are these laws? There's one about related to recruitments in government services, in which the permanent resident clause has been replaced by domicile. The domicile now applies not to the permanent residents of Jammu and Kashmir as they were in 1947, but to domiciles who may have lived there for 2 years or have studied there or worked there from 2 to 5 years. Business investments are now invited by outsiders. So both these things, while domicile clause marginalizes and creates fears that locals will now lose their jobs to outsiders, students within Jammu and Kashmir will now have to compete with those from outside for education in higher institutions. And as regards business investments, it completely marginalizes the local businessmen because those coming from outside have deeper pockets. And sometimes they are preferred. Lands are being leased out to them at throwaway prices, while the applications of the locals are being rejected in many of the investments related to mining or other investments, hotel industry, whatever. And this is also creating an ecological impact. Because the bigger crony capitalists coming into Jammu and Kashmir, they're obviously going to extract their pound of flesh. And this is creating an ecological anxieties within Jammu and Kashmir, recently in Ladakh, which initially celebrated the grant of union territory status to them, is now protesting against these changes because they feel that it is going to create an ecological impact. The government says that tourism is going up, and indeed, there has been robust tourism in the last 1 year. According to official figures, there has been 15 to 20% growth. But tourism is not the only sector of economy. It accounts for only 15% of the economy, and only few people are connected to the tourism industry. Besides, encouraging too much tourism without sustainability factor in the fragile Himalayan region will have its own repercussions. I will quickly talk about the land laws, what they have done, and this is massive. This is one of the most serious and damaging repercussions of Article 370 revocation. The land laws have been, about 12 acts related to land have been repealed and 14 have been amended. J&K state, within J&K, the state was always the biggest owner and thus protected the rights of the people. The state was never a perfect entity. It had all its flaws with all its inefficiency, its corruption and everything, but there were certain laws that protected the rights of the people. There was a land reform as per which land had been given to the tiller. There were agrarian reforms which protected the rights of farmers. Lands were often given, since the state was the owner, lands were given on lease to people for use as residences, for agricultural purposes, for business purposes, for hotel industry. Now, these are all likely to go. And especially new laws that have been introduced in the name of acquiring land for security purpose or for development. The government can take away vast tracts of land that people are using, and people can be evicted. Their homes can be demolished or are being demolished even as we speak. And we don't hear of all this because silence has been imposed through an intimidating climate of fear in which everybody is silent. The politicians, the media, the civil society. There is thus a systemic attempt to silence and disempower people. The aim for a majoritarian BJP government would be to marginalize and disempower Muslims. But even the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Sikhs, and other communities, they are the collateral damage. To conclude, I would say for years, New Delhi has pursued the politics of patronage. They have patronized few elements within Jammu and Kashmir and tried to manipulate its politics. They have pitted up one region against another. They have pitted up one community against another. And this has led to colossal suffering within. There are some stories we will hear after I've spoken, and there are many, many more which might not be told today. And there are more that continue to be added by the day. We need to apply brakes to this process. Jammu and Kashmir deserves peace. Because people have suffered. And because security and peace in South Asia is threatened if Jammu and Kashmir is not peaceful. Thank you.
I now invite Ajay Raina to take over. He has a video clip, and on his cue, we'll start the video. So, Ajay, if you want to say a few words, and when you want to start the video, just give us the cue. Thank you.
Raju, and morning for all of you from India. What I'm going to do here is some excerpts from a recent film in Kashmir. The title of the film is Motarang. Motarang is a Kashmiri word which actually translates into an expression which would mean that the color of your face at the moment of death. So the English translation of the same would be at the moment of death. This film has been made over many years. The process started in 2003 after my first film in Kashmir, which was about me going back to Kashmir after 12 years of not being there. It features mainly Sanjay Tikku, who has been very active leader of Kashmiri Pandits who are based in Kashmir, who never left. At the time of the exodus in 1990, out of whatever population, some claim it was 350,000, some claim it was 170,000. But still, there were at least 30,000 people who still did not choose to join the exile. Over last 30 years, this population has dwindled to roughly 2,500, 3,000 now. And my film shows the entire process of how this dwindling has come about. It follows a group of Kashmiri locals, Hindus, who have traversed the landscape of Kashmir, looking for the spiritual geography, looking at the sites of the massacres, looking at desecrated temples, and expressing their own views or their own, the violations, basically, of their dignity they have faced in Kashmir in the last 30 years. Ironically, since we started talking about Article 370, I would like to say that whatever has happened to the Hindus in Kashmir is a intended or unintended consequence of the same article, which was existent in Kashmir for the reason that it is meant to preserve the unique culture and identity of Kashmiris. But the consequence is for you to see in the clips that I'm showing there. I made 3 films in Kashmir, but I would say they are useless films because it doesn't affect the right wing, cannot appropriate my films for reasons that my films are critical of them also. And what you call the intellectual elite, the human rights groups in India, the liberal section of India, they also would not take my films at face value because it contradicts everything they have been saying and propagating about what happened to Hindus in Kashmir. My films are a record and an archive. I made 3 films in Kashmir and another film in Pakistan, which features Kashmir to an extent. There's a massacre which happened in Nadimarg in 2003, and that is in the film called Wapsi, which is mostly about the consequences of partition on the people of India and Pakistan. I would end by saying that I do not believe that violence or bloodshed is an answer to any problem. There have been problems in Kashmir, historic problems or problems arising out of the freedom movement in Kashmir. But the only right way to go about is to have a difficult conversation that we all need to have, irrespective of where one comes from, and bring things out and find solutions according to what we have felt in Kashmir. I would like Mr. Raju to go ahead and start the excerpts. If there are any questions you would like to ask at the end of my showing the clip, I'll be ready to answer them. Thank you very much.
Islam, बाकी छुन कहीं रिलीजन बाकी बस टाइम पास क्या बस अम कह वन तुम क्या ऑलमोस्ट डेली मरा नमाज आज पढ़ वन पे मजाक करान या इवन मे रिसेंटली ना रेश रिसेंटली मे वन तम वन यार नाव योत बदलावन मेहरबानी कर शुबक ज्यादा व्हाट डज दीज वर्ड इंटरप्रेट शुबक ज्यादा मतलब समटाइम यू कैन टेक इट ए जोक बट अगर आप बार बार कोई चीज रिपीट करते हो ना तो यू कैन अंडरस्टैंड दिस इज अ मैसेज जो टेक्निकली वनो खतरनाक ह्यूमन राइट वायलेशन जो हम एक्सप्रेस नहीं कर पाते अगर करेंगे तब भी हम पे ही ब्लेम आएगा नहीं वैसे आप चुपचाप मतलब एक ऐसे समझ लीजिए एक लेडी एक क्राउडेड बस में खड़ी है और शी इज बीन molested. If she raises her voice, she gets stigmatized. Same cases with us. We are being raped, we are being molested, morally, demagas mazan. We can't say anything. We have to go with it. We have to face it. Either we are living here or we are dead.
Sani ladies folk they were more brave than the opposite gender. Na tro timo tok karo, na tro dood karo. But they too were being harassed kat sense nos gasa. Oh, bad shamit. Ya az kur varya kıl partni hun darshun. Raj bhai tu kar chuba amit. Ya partni kare check karum chain per. Yes normal routine. Local. जो रास्ते से चल रहे थे यह सो नॉर्मल कर बटन लो लो साम तो दैट मीन्स कि असली प्रोग्राम हो बटा वर बटन पाकिस्तान सीधा वेट हो जाता है व्हाट वाज दिस नॉर्मली नफर पकान यह ना कत कर ना कहीं बटन लो लो साम वस बटा क्या कर बटन तो आज कोर बटन दीदा क्या यह ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशन ना यह यदि माइग्रेशन गई 90s मज पत रूद तो तथ दौरान मज मिलिटेंट यूनिट ऑपरेट करान तम कतान कोर्मुत इंटरनली फीडर कि यह बटन वन दिव नबर ग तम पत कि कोड इंटरनली वन फतवा यमो कोर कि अगर अमिस पंडित जी वो नेरुन अम परमिशन मगर ये परमिशन है अमिस इमीजिएट मॉस्क तत्युक इंतजाम कमेटी हूं नफर या मौलवी तत्युक ठीक है। अगर अमिस आज नेरुन अमिस वन कि बह कर वापस कंस खानदर रिश्तेदारस मज कंस कह गुजरान मतलब इमीजिएटली फैमिली मेम्बर गुजरान अमिस बिचार जरूरी तर अगर ये ड्यूरेशन ऑफ स्टेइंग गो ज्यादा गसान अमिस मानान कि अमिस वन चोर दह अंदर अंदर वापस 4 दह अंदर आख तो ठीक आख न तेल तरज योर कह अगर आख तो सुनोत एलिमिनेट कर सह मरा दैट इज अ ट्रू फैक्ट बट एज पर एज ए संजय तुकू इज कंसर्न मे मरा कुन ति सात यह सा यह परमिशन हेतमुत कह
Watar saat karmaya, naam karmaya, swa ugno hai ti kam si buju hunu. Ruga karavasa puri chaya tan ta se jana puri, ratan ta se digan ta puri chaya tan ta tu jana puri. Watar
इतन उस ना आमुत क्या होना था इस when civilization is evolution is begun, the people used to draw pictures on the walls to define how they used to live. So this is their civilization, but they are drawn on these walls.
तुंदिस पुरानिस वतनस मज संग्रामपोरा तुम वन तह कत मकान मोतीलाल अपोजिट यप हाँ 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 इत कस घर तम सात बसान नौ टोटल कस घर गई 8 घर। अच्छा मे वन तो ये स्पॉट ना ये तिमन ये पे घर पे नेक तो ये ना मतलब तुम शहीद आय कर तुम सह कुछ स्पॉट हाँ 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 लकुटदार हाँ हाँ ठीक लबि सह फायरिंग कर हाँ सह कपर मोरमुत
तम सात गई कम दायम गाम 10-15 जानपुर जाल बट यपे बट इलाक मज ये फौज हेक न फौज नीत इन वापस वही कर तुम फौज रोज थप दप कर जालमो बड़ मकान आन ये पे नजर फौज हिंदुस्तान डिफेंस ये पे 1 किलोमीटर 1 किलोमीटर तह क्या 1 मीटर कम बचे तम कि बह ये सुबह शाम बकार लगन मेस मकान रूद तम रच मगर बाकी जोलमो सारे तमाम यपर बट डिस्ट्रिक्स मज मकान जर प्रत कुछ जाए ये बसल तम बचे तम पे कर
ये कितना मकान है?
71 मकानों से।
दोपो काम सिटी आजादी
ना गवर्नमेंट क्या अवस्था में गवर्न?
पागल पागल
बेजोल का कांगाम?
प्रेसर
स्कच्चा?
क्या
तपरते सही। ये कितना मकान है?
लम्बा बाटे
हाँ?
वारिया युगो हाला युग न तोड़ बे आप हो तो मालपुर था थोड़ा
तपरते सही।
ताकि साफ नोचनम गा मकान आगज यमशी हिंदुस्तान बचे तात्याये वारे लट यो यस तो अंदर वारी कड़ी सोरी ऐसा मायन क्या लका हाथ क्या मायने क्यों
अंदर को लोट वोट?
सोरी है सोरी यमो उसने बाटो सुनती है बेचारे सोरी तरह यमो उस काम किया सने मत सोरी
उधर हमारा बने कौन आर्मी आई 3 बजे गई कितने बने वो ये पर किधर आए हमारे हमारा बजे तकरीबन 9:30 बजे दरवाजा खोलो बाहर निकलो बाहर हम निकले एक दरवाजा दायरे की हमारा सही साथ में 2 मिनट सुबह में थी हमारा कुछ चीज आंगन में इधर से भाग जाओ वरना मार दिए जाएंगे पता वो दियो दोपन आप एक काम कर लो दोपन तो जैसे आउटसाइड या तुम दोहन दोपन यहाँ से भाग जाओगे ये पूरा मेरे पे मतलब चढ़ जाएगा
तो ये कोर्ट से ठीक
कोर्सेस ठीक कोर्सेस 4-5 लगी कॉलेज
बड़ी जमा चल डैमेज
ना एडिशन डैमेज का कॉल 5 से लगी ऑपरेशन करोस एप्लीकेशन करो जैसा रिहैबिलिटेशन कुंचे इसना से हको पन्निस गांव हो बिहित किया येले एम दोपन बहर में कौन से करे तो इश्तो कश्मीर सारी पार्ट इस नियारो दुपा नीरो गसियो ताकि इमोले पोत्र लेटर क्रिमिनल कश्मीरी पंडित सोनू कुमार पागा गन दिमो मेच तास्त टास बे कोस
Thank you. Thank you, Harita. So Ajay, we will move on to the next speaker, and I'm sure people will have a lot of questions about your film, and we will take it up during the Q&A. Thank you so much. I again want to mention that we were looking very much forward to Mr. Sanjay Tikku to join us, but he has had to attend to some emergency health issues, so he is unable to come. But I think this film itself shows his involvement in
preserving the Kashmiri Pandits who stayed back in Kashmir. I would like next to move on to Bill Cowell. Bill Cowell is from Perth, Australia. And as I mentioned earlier, he has written several books on Kashmir. He's a Kashmiri Pandit himself, and he has made several visits recently to seek pathways to reconciliation between the communities. So I will let him take from there. Bill, it's all yours. It's 9 a.m. there. No, more than that. It's probably close to 10 o'clock. Thanks for joining.
Bill, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Raju. And thank you and greetings to my fellow panelists and greetings to all fellow humans around the planet. All Kashmiris have stories, me included. All my family members and friends and relatives have their own stories and views and thoughts on Kashmir and the Kashmir issue. While some stories may overlap, most will not. Pandits have their own stories, individual and collective, and so have Kashmiri Muslims. The reason is humans have personal thoughts, feelings, and emotions. No two humans respond exactly same to an external stimulus. Our sensitivities too differ individually. Why? We are intelligent beings, although we also show herd behaviors in some situations. Our individual intelligence varies. For me, Hinduism is synonymous with humanism, and I believe in a global village. Now, in this case, my fellow panelists have already provided a very useful description of the issue, the facts and the figures on ground. It's a complex issue. I suggest we invoke the child in us. The questions are what? What is the issue? Why is the issue? And how can it be solved? This is as an engineer also, I approach any problem like that. As engineers, medical professionals, lawyers, they ask the same questions. What is the issue? What are the reasons behind the issue? And what are the solutions, if at all? Kashmir issue is a complex issue because it depends upon your perspective, where you're coming from. So let's start the Socratean way of understanding it. Lots of water has flown since 1990. But does it really start from 1990? When did the Kashmir issue start? In 1990? In 1987? 1965? 1947? 1846? Or much better, but I can go far back as 1339. The issue, when did it start? And what is exactly the issue? Kashmir, my motherland, is divided into 3 countries. Pakistan holds 1/3 after 1947, and China took about 20% in 1962, and the remaining is being with India. There won't be a country which should be divided into 3 countries anywhere in the world. This is it's not a good feeling. And Kashmir had its own existence, a 5,000-year history. It was a seat of education. Proud Kashmiri, but then it saw lots of turmoil in its history, geopolitical. And that created a flux over time. My mom used to say that digging old bones, causes new disputes. In Kashmiri, if those who are Kashmiri, she would say, "Prain kat gaye, no ladai." But can we just brush it under the carpet? What happened? Because unless we know what is the issue, we can't find the solutions. Why I'm saying this? Because what is the purpose of this webinar? What are we trying to do here? Although this is not a political debate here, but politics is intertwined in every aspect of human life. Politics, geopolitics, politics at the family level, politics at the workplace. There's always politics. Means how to say things, why to say things, what not to say, when not to say, so that we all function on a common ground. That's very important, without annoying or causing disruptions in what we are trying to achieve. Is Kashmir issue a human issue? Now, is it a religious issue? Is it a political issue? Is it a geopolitical issue? And when did this issue start? It's not one issue, it's several issues. Now, can we all come down to the common denominator, the human? We are all humans. The untold stories from Kashmir. Who are Kashmiris? Is it from Kashmiri or people who are from Kashmir and living outside? We all have our stories. People have emotions. They have feelings. So is my feeling more valid than the feeling of a person who's living in Kashmir? The question is, why aren't we happy? Who is happy with Kashmir issue? Are Kashmiris happy? Are Kashmiri Muslims happy? Are Kashmiri Pandits happy for what happened? And why aren't we happy? And how do we move forward? How do we construct bridges? This is something we all have to understand. This is 2023. Not nearly, 33 years have passed since the mass exodus of Kashmiri Pandits happened from Kashmir, of Kashmiri Pandits. 33 years. The median age of India and the subcontinent should be is about 28.5 years. That means 50% people are less than 50. 50% people are less than 28.5 years. That means roughly 60 to 70% Kashmiris on both sides, Pandits and the Muslims, 60 to 70% don't have any memories, living memories of cohabitation. They don't know, they don't have any memories because half were not born, 50%. And about 5 to 10% or 15% must have been between 5 to 10-year-old. So we are left with now only about 25, 30% people on either side who have memories of cohabitation in Kashmir. And this generation, this minority of 20 to 25% people will disappear from the planet in next 20, 25, 30 years at the most. And after 30 years, there won't be many people on the planet, Kashmiri Muslims or Kashmiri Pandits, who will have any memory of cohabitation. It will be gone. Generally, I would say very less number of, except those who are living in Kashmir and who continue to live in Kashmir, if the environment remains so. What is the reason? I left in 1989, a month before the mass exodus. I returned from Roorkee University after my postgrad. I found something, there were some odd behaviors in the human beings. I was teaching, I was a lecturer at a regional engineering college, Srinagar. Now it's called NIT. I was mortally afraid. I could see the behaviors. I was quite sensitive. I was married as a young child, a baby. I was mortally afraid of leaving my home in Rawalpura and going to REC. So I used to request my wife, Rekha, who's an academic, to accompany me, and she would wait for me in Hazratable Shrine, Dargah, wearing a bindi. And I used to conduct the classes in REC and then sneak through a back door from between REC campus and the Hazratable Shrine, and then go back home. I was afraid of getting caught in crossfiring. I was afraid of getting caught in a bomb blast, collateral. So for me, it was not a Muslim and Pandit thing. It was militancy. What caused the militancy? What happened in 87? What happened before that? That's an important question. We all know it. What caused the militancy? Is it a religious problem? Or is it a human problem? The majority always seems to be suspect, apprehensive of a minority. It happens in classroom, it happens in college, it happens in communities, it happens in clubs. The majority of people who do things one way or look one based on the color of the skin, how I look, how I talk, what religion, my habits. And when you find some people, the minority, doing things differently, there's always coercion. Come on, do like us. But always suspicion, why are they different? That's a human behavior. Minority, those people who don't conform, the conformity issues, the conform, they're always under the radar, under pressure to conform. But if they resist, that's a problem. So that's on the human level. So I left. My father, he left a month later, not to leave, but to just for about 7 days to accompany my niece from my cousin from Delhi back to her home. But then he continued to work as executive engineer because his jurisdiction in fisheries was J&K. As superintendent engineer, he was J&K Police Housing Corporation. As chief engineer, he was in Kashmir, in R&B, roads and buildings. He continued to be there. I didn't go to Kashmir for next 22 years because I felt in 1989, I felt cheated. I felt let down by whole system. Why this was happening in Kashmir. I wasn't feeling very happy. I left on 23rd December 1989. And that day, I remember, had I not got the flight, I would have taken refuge in the Air Force camp, along with my 2-year child and my wife. My parents didn't live with me because they didn't believe me. Nobody believed me that time that something was not right in the valley. So I left. And it took me 22 years to come back. And thereafter, that's 2012. Thereafter, every year I used to go 2 to 3 times. I tried to meet many people. I went to camps in Jammu. I asked people, what do you want? And they said, we want to go home. We are not afraid. This is not same as 1990. I met many people in Kashmir, prominent people in Kashmir. And they said, yes, you people, Kashmiri Pandits, it's your home, you're us, it's all ours. Please come. And many people, prominent people said, we'll raise the money from the mosque we'll organize land for the habitation of Kashmiri Pandits, and we'll raise half the money, but half the money must come from government. So it was, to me, it looked like even I was considering constructing a house, buying a piece of land, and that was in 2018, I think so, just before Burhan Wani. And the day Burhan Wani happened, I was in Srinagar. And I remember how I escaped again, how I went to airport for catching a 4 o'clock flight. And so until 2018, yes, I was considering constructing a house so that my father could live there. I could go there and live there. But things then turned in a different direction in 2019. And then COVID happened. But let me tell you, I'm getting a lot of stories from Kashmir. The other day, I had a call from a Kashmiri, I would say Muslim, a fellow Kashmiri, and he happens to be a Muslim. And he said his father was shot dead by militants on the very first day of militancy in 1990. He's a Kashmiri Muslim. And he says now, after 2019, when we go to any part of India and they know that he's a Muslim, they think we're terrorists. So he feels a bit degraded. He said, here, my father was killed by militants in 1990, but now I'm seen as a terrorist. So this is a psychology. A other young person who says, now we are used to it. We see army, we have seen army, we have seen lockdown, we have seen lockdown due to COVID, and after 2019, it did exacerbate, and now it's just being strike. People in Kashmir are not very happy, despite tourism influx. It's 1 crore last year. There used to be 120 flights a day, but that tourist money only goes to some people, not to the whole economy across Kashmir. But people are just being stoic, and the question is how long? And as I said, only 20 to 25% people on either side have some living memories of cohabitation, and this generation will be gone in the next 20, 24, 25 years, and there will be nothing left. In my books, there are 2 books specifically on Kashmir, but in all other remaining 7 books, I have included a section or a chapter on Kashmir. You can't remove Kashmir from a Kashmiri. I'm trying to move on. I don't want to dig past bones. There is an issue, but there is a solution. The solution is we have to recognize that the people on both sides are humans, and human emotions must be addressed. Well, we can't do all that for all humans, for 1 million or 10 million humans. But bridges have to be built again on an individual basis, so that we can again reweave the fabric of Kashmir and Kashmiria. Now, it's not the question of Bill Cole going to Kashmir or living there. It is our future generations, because the mother Kashmir would like all her children to be there, proactive, and Kashmir should have peace. Kashmir deserves peace. Every land, every nook and corner of the earth, Mother Earth, deserves peace. Force doesn't bring peace. People become stoic and they buy time, but the issue remains there. And the longer an issue remains, the greater is the force it rebounds. Winning hearts is important, and that hearts can be won only by trust. And that's very important for all the stakeholders to keep hope and keep trying to revive the fabric of Kashmir, so that trust building happens on both sides, or else sadness and unhappiness will persist for all times. And that's my appeal. We have to move on for the sake of Mother Kashmir and for our all future generations. Trust has to be inculcated. You have to become trustworthy, and you have to trust the other person. Yes, wrong things do happen. Lots of things happen. But the human population has now increased to 8 billion, despite all the wars in the past, despite all the pandemics and epidemics in the past, because there is positivity in the human race. We keep moving ahead. Negativity doesn't grow. It doesn't allow you to grow. Negativity is poison. It finishes, it destroys. It's only the positivity which allows the growth. We had to remain positive. We had to invoke that positivity in each one of us. And for the sake of Kashmir, in the context of this seminar, I appeal to all of us. I'm a humanist. I'm a Kashmiri Pandit, but my humanism is interwoven in my Hinduism. And that's how I see it. Let's all work on the human level and address human emotions if we want to see peace in our mother Kashmir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill, for that powerful presentation with your personal story. I just wanted to say, when we were trying to name this series, there was some debate about whether we should call it Desh-Videsh Conversations Across the Divide. And it sounded rather negative to kind of reinforce the idea there's a huge divide. But we also needed to be realistic and to say to people where we are today. But hopefully with people like you and several other peace builders, maybe one day, maybe next year, we'll change it to Desh-Videsh Conversations, building bridges across the divide. Let's pray that it'll happen. Thank you so much. Right now, we will move on to the Q&A portion. We'll try to get as many questions as possible. So as I indicated earlier, people in this room, please write your questions on the index cards and pencils provided and pass them on to me. And make sure you address a specific panelist. Keep your question brief on the topic, and we'll get to you as soon as we can. And on the Zoom side, where I think we've seen, as you've seen, 70, 80 people on Zoom consistently throughout this event. I'm sure they have a lot of questions, and Prabodh has been looking at their questions, as well as my colleague Sunita, and I'll let them alternate with me or maybe intersperse with me questions from the Zoom audience. So it all depends on how many questions you guys have. Thank you. Okay, since I got the first question here from the audience, I'll keep it going. This is from Srinivas. What would a Truth and Reconciliation Commission for Kashmir be like? Could each panelist address this question? Who needs to conduct such a commission? Can I stay with that one question for now? And perhaps Bill can start, and we'll hear very briefly from all three of you to this particular question about Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Sir, all stakeholders should be represented, level-headed people who don't have any past baggage or any extra grind from stakeholders, from all stakeholders of Kashmir. You have the Pandits, you have the Muslims, you have the Sikhs, and you have the Dogras. When I talk about Kashmir, I'm talking about Jammu and Kashmir, because that's historically what's happened in 1846, and let it stay like that. So all have to be represented, and with a very pragmatic, but no baggages to forge ahead. That should be the commission on the human level. Yes, and there has to be government participation also, but not any influence from the government. Thank you.
Ajay?
I do believe there should be truth and reconciliation, and as been suggested, there would be many people interested in doing that, interested in being part of that. There has to be a reconciliation. There has to be some common meeting ground. We have to ultimately realize that it depends on the people of Kashmir to solve their problems first. And of course, there are problems with India and Pakistan. There are the larger issues, but the basic issue is about loss of humanity that we have seen in last 33 years since the conflict, since the freedom movement started. I also believe that it is primarily up to the majority, whether it is the Hindu majority in rest of India or it's the Muslim majority in Kashmir, that will eventually have to take the first step in reconciling with its minorities, in ensuring that its minorities are safe and sound, happy and peaceful, and there is a mutual coexistence between the two. The process, I don't know where it has to begin, but I believe it primarily has to begin with the majority.
Rota, do you have a response? Can you take the microphone?
Wherever you.
This is about the truth and reconciliation.
My answer is going to be complicated. Truth and Reconciliation Commission, I think it is a good idea. We usually take it from South Africa. The problem in applying it in the Kashmir case is that we are not really at that stage of conflict transformation. And this is probably ideally suitable at a stage where there is a process of conflict transformation. But that does not mean that we do not dialogue. I liked something that, Bill called, thank you very much for the very powerful presentation and talking about humanity as the core of it and bringing human to the center of the debate. I think that was very important. I'll also take from something that Ajay Raina said. He said, we should have these difficult conversations. I think before having the difficult conversations, we just need to listen to each other with empathy. We need to hear each other's stories, memories, without questioning them, with empathy. And I would like to bring on board an experience I had, and we don't need to wait for conflict transformation stage to do that. Today, we are in a digital stage where we can probably, some of us can be involved in this process. We can talk, start community level dialogue across the world. And I would like to go back to the peace process years, after in the 2000s, many of us were involved in the people-to-people dialogue. And my experience was that it was not just Kashmir, it was also Kashmir sometimes overshadows rest of the state. People of Jammu had suffered too. The suffering is different. And within Jammu, there were people from Doda, Rajouri, Punch, who probably suffered the most because they bore the pangs of all the wars that happened on the borders. And when we have these people-to-people dialogue, initially when it started in 2000, nobody wanted to hear the other person. There was so much anger, there was so much of venom at the table. And within the next 5-6 years, we could see a change. The same people coming again and again, they were talking about each other's suffering. And that is the plus point of a dialogue, of the ability to listen to each other first and have those difficult conversations to be followed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we take a question?
There is a new question related to this thing. The Kashmir is also one of the highest.
Would you use the microphone, please?
There is a related question. That Kashmir is the world's highest militarized zone with 100,000 plus people who have died. Thousands have disappeared. Lakhs of people have been displaced. Women, children have become orphans. They have been violated. What will be the beginning of a peace initiative in Kashmir? Yeah, you have to go.
I think the beginning of a peace process has to come from India and Pakistan. They are the ones who created the problem. And it would have to begin from there. And once that process starts, it allows the facilitation of people-to-people level dialogue. I would not like to place too much onus on only the majority community. One also needs to understand that, yes, in most normal conditions, the onus and the responsibility of maintaining peace is on the majority community. But Kashmir, we need to understand, is also a militarized zone, where the majority is one of the most powerless communities as well. I mean, there's no black and white, but we do need to understand this very gray reality. I think any
There is another question. For Mr. Bill Cowell. A friend who recently returned from Kashmir said that, of course, it is beautiful, but also that they felt very safe because there was an armed soldier every 100 meters. Can the panel please comment? First, Bill Cowell.
Yes. Now, you have to see the psychology of a human. It depends upon which side you're looking at it. Here in Perth, I don't see a soldier. I don't see a policeman. We hardly see cops. Sometimes on motorcycles, they're checking your registration and all that, or the speed limit, and police car, but we don't see many cops around in the streets and all that. But if a child has grown seeing a cop in a bunker with a gun right from the beginning, the psychology of the child is very different from the psychology of a child who hasn't seen it. While we may feel safe that there is a soldier at every corner of the street, but there's also a fear from the other side. So some people feel safe for the same thing. Some people say insecure because of the same thing. This all about the psychology and about the memories, the stories. Suppose we have similar situation in the rest of India. How will an Indian child feel? Safe or unsafe? That's the question.
There is another question for Mr. Ajay Rana. That the recent media coverage, including Hindi cinema, representation of Kashmir, most recently, for example, a film like Pathan that has been hugely successful, maybe because of a Kashmir angle that is superficial and populist. Would love to know what is his reaction and how does he feel about it.
First of all, I don't see much in this cinema. My experience of how Hindi cinema or Indian popular cinema has depicted Kashmir is in bold tones. It arises from some kind of it reinforces the idea of Kashmir being the jewel in the crown of India. It reinforces the idea that Kashmir is something special to India. And it also reinforces the idea that, Muslims are not doing right by Kashmir, right by
Ajay, your video is frozen. Can't hear you. Okay.
India and Kashmir. It also
maybe we
Okay.
can come back to the other questions.
Yes. Let me take another next two questions, which primarily addressed to Anuradha. This one says, if you're claiming that the government did not consult the locals in Kashmir when abrogating Article 370, are you claiming that the actions of the local government in 1990 were in the best interest of Kashmir? And I will combine that with your thought about India and Pakistan as countries have to take the lead. Given India's relationship with Pakistan, is a peaceful solution possible in Kashmir? That's from Rajiv. And the other one, I don't have a name. Could you?
Was it the state government in 19? I don't understand.
So whoever wrote about 1990 action, were you referring to the state government or the central government?
Yeah, the local government. The actions of the local government in 1990, even before that, there was much that was going wrong. And as I mentioned, even in my own presentation, that things had been wrong for a long time. The local governments were never perfect either. Many of them were patronized by the center, and they were there. And there were several follies over the year. But that cannot be used as an excuse to say, okay, what followed after that will probably make things right. And that's just my point and understanding. The fact that what happened in 1990, if something wrong had happened, what happened in 370 does not become right only on the basis of that. It was undemocratic, and that's it. Given India's relationship with Pakistan, yes, definitely. Peace is the only option. Peace, dialogue, there is no other substitute for peace. Other than that, we just have war, we have hostility. No relationships between two countries can be perfect if we're just going to turn our backs to each other and become rigid. I think we need to talk. We need to talk about the most difficult and the most contentious of issues to sort out the problems. We live in an era where diplomacy and dialogue and friendship and cooperation are better options, or the only options to war and hostility. That's in the interest of people.
I'll quickly answer one of the questions. This is not on topic, but nonetheless, since the whoever wrote this seems to be concerned, is more about Hindus for human rights. What are you doing for the minorities in Pakistan and Bangladesh? This question comes up every day in one form or another. As I said very clearly in the beginning, we are as concerned about the situation of Hindus in Pakistan and Bangladesh. We have taken positions, we have posted articles, and will continue to do so. And I can take it up separately, but I thought I'll mention this even though this is not about today's topic. Thank you. If you can go to the next one.
There is a question for all the panelists. How important is the role of Hindus in India and abroad to resist the militaristic authoritarianism of the ruling party? Do you have any suggestions? And how does it impact the Kashmir?
Can I? Can I speak? Should I speak?
Yes, please.
You see, authoritarianism is rising around the world. My latest book is 2022. After I ran for of 2 elections here in Australia for federal and state, this book came out, and it's called authoritarian democracies, need or capitalistic greed. If you can see around the world, authoritarianism is now becoming a new norm. And we are gradually forgetting what democracy is all about. Is it really a democracy? So on the ground, you may call yourself democratic and all that, but there are, to qualify to be a democratic, there are the institutional sanctities. Institution means your judiciary, your central bank, your election commission, and most of it, the media. The media and journalism, the freedom of expression is paramount because the government has to be kept in check. And that's the basic fundamental condition for qualifying a democracy. Authoritarianism is happening around the world. It's not, so we must be very careful there. And that's the book. It's a quite a big 400-page book. But as far as the role of majority is concerned, as Anuradha said or Ajay said, majority plays a big role. Consider a classroom where 30 students are of one ethnicity, they look differently, and 10 students are different. Always, it will happen that those 10 minority students will feel a bit of, this ragging always happens, there's a bit of, initially it happens, but then finally, when they graduate, they all become friends. Majority always tries to make the authority to conform to its things, dictates, firstly, we feel afraid. Why does he look different? What does he think? Why doesn't he eat like me? Why is his food different than me? Then it comes to religion, all these things. So if you're not conforming in terms of natural things or even the man-made things like religion is a man-made thing, but natural things by ethnicity and color and whatever, they do. So majority plays the role. The onus is on majority, as Ajay said, and another. The majority plays a role to make the minority feel comfortable. That you are one of us, don't worry. We'll take care of you. That's love, the empathy. The word empathy, as Anuradha said just now. Empathy, compassion, care, love. Love can't be measured, it's misused word, but empathy, compassion, and care. These win hearts. And once the minority feels comfortable in cohabitating with the majority, peace prevails. That's very important. The majority community in India, in the subcontinent, must take care of their minorities, must take care. Inclusiveness is very important. Whether it is Kashmir majority, whether it's Indian majority, whether it's Pakistan majority, majorities must look after their minorities so that the peace can prevail. Very important thing. Thank you.
Prabodh, can you take another question?
There are no more questions.
Okay.
Just suggestions.
Yeah. Before I go to the next question, as you heard the questions and answers so far, I really wish that Athar Zia had been here, because what we are missing in this conversation is a voice of a woman, voice of a Kashmiri Muslim woman, a woman who has studied what women and children in Kashmir are going through right now. So when I saw Ajay Raina's film on Kashmiri Hindus, the thought occurred to me that perhaps maybe 2 or 3 years from now, we'll start to see similar stories about what Kashmiri Muslims are going through today. Demolition of homes, arrests, and so forth. So I don't want to delve on it. I just wanted to make that point that we do have that missing voice, and I hope we can bring her back sometime to share. I don't know if she's on her way to Kashmir, but losing a dad is a very, very sad thing, and I wish her best again. Let me read the next question. Thank you for your participation, panelists. I have 2 questions, one each for Anuradha and the other one for Bill Kaul. Anuradha, how do we apply brakes to this process? Does it mean that we advocate for bringing back 317? And for Bill, you spoke about building trust. Building trust in what? how do we inculcate that after decades of violent betrayal? And this is from Bhargavi. Thank you.
Can I go first?
Yeah, please.
How do we apply brakes? I think it's a very loaded question. And when I say this, I'm actually addressing India, Pakistan, first of all. Do we go back to 370? I'm not sure if that's going to resolve the problem, because there was a problem even when 370 was there. The conflict was existing already. So there is a long pending conflict. And if you, I mean, how far do we want to go back? But, you know, if we want to talk about peace in South Asia in modern contemporary times, I'd like to at least go back to 1947 and start from there. So while there needs to be, I feel, a peace process between India and Pakistan, the people of India and Pakistan need to be involved, and there needs to be another layer which involves the people of Kashmir. So it's not just India and Pakistan who are party to the Kashmir dispute. It's not a bilateral dispute. It is not about territory. It is about the people of Jammu and Kashmir who live on both sides, and they must be involved. Was that the question? And how do we? And you know, at the same time, it should be there should be an internal dialogue within Jammu and Kashmir with peoples from different communities and different regions from across the line of control as well, talking to each other to find out a solution, and a permanent solution, one that we all agree on.
Bill?
Yes, necessity is the mother of invention. If I need to work with a co-worker and the co-worker is not happy with me, or I'm not trusting co-worker, but we have to work, there is another way out. What do? We must step into each other's shoes. If I can see myself from the eyes of the other person and try, and that's how it starts with me. I mean, everything starts with me. The onus is on me. If I expect the other person or the other party to take the initiative, then I'm in fool's paradise. But if I really want to build bridges, for example, with my father or my mother or my partner or my friend, and I think that's very important because it's as important, that relationship is important for me. So what do? There's a common sense. I start with me. I try to see myself from the eyes of the other person. Hey, Bill, you're doing something wrong here. Probably this behavior is annoying the other person and making you feel distrustful. Have a dialogue. Dialogue is very important. As Anuradha said, number one, carrying past baggages is a problem. It debilitates. It doesn't, and with time, as the baggage becomes heavier and heavier and heavier, we are unable to move ahead. We are unable to forge ahead. So at some point of time, the baggage has to be thrown. You may not throw it fully, but lighten it somehow, reconcile. And that happens by internal contemplation. But understanding the other's viewpoint and then self-analyzing yourself is the first step, stepping into the shoes of the other person. And then earnestly, honestly, sincerely approach the other person. Come on, let's have a cup of coffee together. Can we have a chat? You see me like this? Yes, I have done this in the past. I have betrayed you. This action must have annoyed you. This action must have annoyed you. But also your action. So that's how it's trust building. But you first have to self-analyze yourself and then go ahead. Only when you think the relationship is important. And that's how we do. You step into the shoes of the other person. But if you continue to sling mud all the time, accusations, past, so the future doesn't exist for a relationship. It starts with us individually. Don't wait for the other party to initiate the dialogue. You initiate the dialogue, introspect, analyze, and see the other person's point of view, and then move ahead, earnestly, in hope, and with good intent. That's it.
Thank you. We, time check, we are at 36 minutes past the hour. We had advertised this webinar as lasting 1.5 hours. However, I see another 6 questions or so here. Can we have a show of hands if we can extend the time, but no more than 8 o'clock, because we have to vacate this place at 8 o'clock. Thank you. So we shall then move on. There's a question for Ajay Raina. If we talk about the threat to democracy from Hindu nationalism, won't the same be applicable for radical Islam in the context of Kashmir from last 35 years? Again, I don't see a name here, but nonetheless, I'll request Ajay to respond to that if he can.
My issue is with majoritarianism on either side, whether it is Hindu majoritarianism in rest of India or Muslim majoritarianism in Kashmir. Both are problems. And I think the problem in Kashmir, if we are talking about Kashmir here, arises from that majoritarianism of the majority. Whether it's talking about Azadi or whether it's talking about, being part of Pakistan, at the root of that is the Muslim majority Kashmir. It's nothing to do with Hindus who have been killed, exiled, whose properties, who have been basically made extinct in Kashmir. They have nothing to do with the demand of the majority for Azadi or for merger with Pakistan. If you call anybody a scapegoat, it is the Hindus of Kashmir who have been made scapegoats. We have always accused the Hindus of Kashmir, voluntarily going into exile. That feeling has even now, even to be careful. Now, who do I have to be careful from after 30 years, after the first exodus happened in 1990? Please tell me that. I think the issue here is majoritarianism, and I'm against both. When you're talking about dialogue, I have tried my best to have a dialogue. In fact, I run a website, an archive, which is called Oral History of Kashmir, which collects voices irrespective of religion, irrespective of sex, irrespective of gender, irrespective of region, anything about Kashmir.
Sorry.
I have uninterrupted archive was killed, not for a reason of this. I have organized a traveling festival of films from Kashmir, looking at all sides of the issue. From 1947 onwards, films from Government of India, films made by Kashmiri Muslims, film made by Hindus, films made by rest of from any part of India. We have traveled to 7 cities, and I could not have that festival. And I was instead attacked in Hyderabad by the Hindu fundamentalists. So please understand that it is the majority that is the issue and nothing else, for me at least.
Thank you. Again, my apologies for all of the financial transactions going on because the kitchen is closing at 8 o'clock and they want to collect their money. Also, thanks for bearing with the electronics, which is very unique, which is very funny because I can't move my computer beyond this because of the short cable. So I'm having to stand here and work on this computer. Hopefully that'll change next time. There's a question here. The question is to all the panelists, I suppose. If you do remove Indian officers from Kashmir, are Kashmiri Pandits safe? Kashmiri Pandits are still being targeted. Is anyone safe? Before I invite the panelists to answer that question, I just want to share a piece of information that I received. This is I think it's, hold on. Okay. The government just put, I can't find that piece of paper, but we received a piece of government communication about appointment of officers to govern Kashmir recently. When you glance through that list, there are about 35, 40 officers running Kashmir. There's one Muslim name, just one. Is that a way to instill confidence in the majority community? So that kind of ties into this. Are they actually there to protect Kashmiri Pandits who are only be 800 families right now? So I don't know what the context is, but it just stood out when I saw that and said, is this the best way to instill confidence in the majority community? Not to, basically the message is we don't trust any of you to run your own neighborhoods. And I just wanted to add that and let the panelists respond to that question. You want to repeat that question? If you remove Indian officers from Kashmir, are Kashmiri Pandits safe?
Thank you, Raju, for pointing out. I was going to say that today we have more Indian officers. And Indian, I would say, not even Hindus from Jammu or Kashmiri Pandits. More Indian officers in Kashmir and hardly any Muslims. Hardly any locals, rather, who know the place culturally, geographically better, who are well versed with the sensibilities of the people. Are Kashmiri Pandits safe today? In the last 10 years, that as I pointed out earlier, when militancy was declining and then gradually kind of coming up, and there is a new phase of militancy. There were no selective killings, maybe rare some case. There were no selective targeted killings in the last 10 years, before 2019, at least between 2008 and 2019, there were no selective killings. Why have they increased suddenly?
Bill or Ajay, any response to that?
Yeah, I can. The question is, if Kashmir is a part of India, what is the practice in other states of India? Is the practice of our representation of people, officers from other states into that state? That's one question. If it's disproportionate of Kashmir, something is not right. Do local people have representation in the governance of their state, which is called now Union Territory? At some point of time, hopefully it will be reinstated as a state of J&K. What is the representation of the local people from all Jammu and Kashmir, and both Hindus and Muslims and Sikhs, all, because they're part of Kashmir. So the representation is necessary. Second question was here, officers, the presence of officers making Kashmiris safe. So are these officers in Kashmir for Kashmiri Pandits? And how many Kashmiri Pandits are there, as Anuradha said or Raju said? How many Kashmiri Pandits are left in Kashmir, or in Kashmir for whom such a large presence is to be? So it's not, if the state is peaceful, every person will be peaceful. Everybody will feel safe. But after the abrogation of Article 370, what happened? Even I was contemplating returning to Kashmir. My father never left. He lives in Jammu, but he worked in Kashmir all through. But many of my classmates, Kashmiri Pandits, they started buying houses in Kashmir and building houses in Kashmir. This is pre-2019. So the confidence was already happening. People were, yes, they were buying piece of land in Kashmir. This is Kashmiri Pandits I'm talking about, my classmates. And they even asked me, how about you? Wouldn't you like to have a house in Kashmir? And I was contemplating seriously. But when Article 370 happened, it's not what happened, it's how it happened. That's a question here, which I have raised in my books. It's not what happened, it's how it happened. Was it happened in consent, the way it happened, and what happened after that, before COVID struck in? So, and some Kashmiri Pandits were seen to be rejoicing on the abrogation of Article 370. That's fine. But if Article 370, if the abrogation process would have happened differently, without the lockdown in Kashmir for a year nearly before COVID struck in, maybe this thing would not have happened. Because so in some people's perception, who are living in Kashmir, including Kashmiri Pandits themselves, they could be feeling insecure. Why did some of their brethren living in other parts of India celebrate openly on the television the abrogation? So had abrogation not brought pain and suffering to people of Kashmir, maybe this selective killing also would not have happened. The whole situation is very complex. The issue between the Pandits and the Muslims of Kashmir, both brethren, they're 80% of them are related by blood, so with common ancestry. Why this happened? What did the abrogation of Article 370 do to the fabric of Kashmir, due to the relationship which was now on the heel, which was on the mends, having nearly 30 years had nearly passed, and it was on the mends because the memories were now fading. The situation of 1990 was no longer there. Pakistan being Pakistan, the conditions have deteriorated in that country. So why it happened after that? So what I'm saying, we really had to understand the effect of Article 370 on the psychology of people on either side. Did it help or not? And what did it serve for Kashmir and the Kashmiri people on both sides of the religious divide? What did it do? Did it mend the relationships? Here in this forum, we are trying to, we are discussing how to mend the relationship between the two communities for the sake of Kashmir and for the future generations. This is our purpose here. We are not trying to divide. We are trying to bring them together as humans on the common denominator. We are all humans, we are Kashmiris, and there's a need for us to cohabit and trust each other. That's very important for the peace and prosperity and progress of Kashmir. That's very important. The trust building. And it starts with me. It starts with I. What can I do? Was my behavior bad or good? How does my behavior need to change so that I can start building the trust of other people in me? It starts with me. Thank you.
Ajay, were you going to speak? Okay, let's move on. A couple of more questions for addressed to Anuradha. What is the practical solution to the Kashmir issue that has highest likelihood of success among all concerned parties? It's a loaded question. The other one says, according to you, when should Article 370 have been abrogated, given that it was always going to be temporary? And it says, why are you falsely claiming that it was supposed to be permanent? I'll give the cards to you if you like.
Take the solution with this. Article 370 was temporary because it kind of sealed the cemented the accession of Kashmir to India. It was a way to integrate Kashmir into India. How do you link it constitutionally? Unlike the other princely states, the accession of Kashmir was exceptional under exceptional circumstances and because of its exceptional nature of the instrument of accession, which was signed by the monarch of that time, a Hindu monarch who was ruling a Muslim majority state. And he had said that this accession is under the circumstances that the raiders from Pakistan, backed by Pakistan army, have entered. And we are unable to fight, and to get army's help, we are being compelled to sign this instrument of accession, and in which it laid down that India will have no control over Jammu and Kashmir, barring on 3 subjects: foreign affairs, defense, and communication. And he said that we should not be compelled to enter into any future arrangement with any of the dominion. And in response, he had also written a letter accompanying the letter, instrument of accession, in response to which Lord Mountbatten had agreed, saying that, yes, this is a different princely state, which is culturally and geographically contiguous. A reference would be made to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And I think that is where probably the solution lies. I'm not falsely claiming, it is there in the constitution, you may check it. What is a practical solution? And as I said, these 2 questions are linked. This is where the solution lies, reference to the people. And I say people here are important and people here are central. And no solution, I agree, Jammu and Kashmir is too complex. It's too diverse. It does not just have 2 communities, it has so many different regions, many different ethnicities, and they all want different things. I agree, as Ajay Raina pointed out, that what the majority in Kashmir Valley wants is not acceptable to the minority. And similarly, I mean, in Jammu, the Hindu majority, for them, being integrated to India is more important. Perhaps for the Muslims, it is not the same thing. So everybody has a different view. But that does not mean that we cannot think out of the box. We need to look at different peace proposals across the world. You know, the Ireland's model, the Ireland model. Who would have thought, you know, the kind of violence that was going on in Northern Ireland in 70s, the Troubles, or even in the 80s, you know, how it came down with that Good Friday Agreement, when the peace process started. And even now, though there are problems that are posited to that peace process because of Brexit, they are not sinking back into that. There is some movement going on to ensure that the aspirations of people of Northern Ireland are met. I think we need to think out of the box. The thing is, you start a peace process, give people some relief. They need some relief from hostility. They need relief from violence. They need relief from excessive militarization. They need to openly talk. A solution will definitely emerge.
Thank you. Thank you, Anuradha. Anuradha has taken, I think, the maximum number of questions today. Thank you for your patience in answering them. But we have a comment, which you might appreciate, from Alok. I won my first debate in college in '97 on Kashmir after reading your articles.
Raju, there is one question, and in fact, it has been addressed to both Mr. Ajay Rana and Bill Kaul. How do they find a solution to the problems of the employees under PM package program who are on streets for months without being heard by the government of India?
No. Give the address to Bill and Ajay. Yeah, would Bill and Ajay respond to that? This is about the PM's package, and I think they're referring to the time of Manmohan Singh package of Kashmiri Pandits willing to return from Jammu to the valley, correct?
2008.
2008, yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, please.
Still there?
Yeah,
Hello.
Ajay can speak first.
No, I'm trying to, I'm wondering if I'm audible there, if I can be heard there. Am I on mute?
No, we can hear you.
Okay. See, in these 30 years, the only Prime Minister of India who has done something for Kashmiri Pandits is Manmohan Singh. BJP, in fact, though many Kashmiri Pandits celebrate the coming of BJP into power and abrogation of 370, they expected BJP to go all out to rehabilitate Kashmiri Pandits in Kashmir, to do wonders for Kashmiri Pandits, but none of that has worked out. In my personal opinion, I think it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to the present regime what happens to Kashmiri Pandits. They are a tool of, another way of addressing the issue of Kashmir from their perspective. They either want Kashmiris Hindus not to exist there, or they want to change the demography of Kashmir, bring in lots of Hindus from rest of India. These are the only two options available to them. Kashmiri Pandits don't matter. Now, should these employees have gone back and demanded? I think they're very scared to stay in Kashmir. In the 10 or 15 years they have been working in Kashmir, they have lived in transit camps. They do not seem to have been, taken in by the larger society. They have felt isolated within Kashmir. There has been, a position to them on a daily basis, in person and collectively, that you are not wanted here. In fact, most of the killings which have recently happened in Kashmir, one of the reasons I believe, though there should be no reason to kill, one of the reasons I believe these killings are happening is because they now begin to see lots of Kashmiri Hindus coming back to offices. They're seeing those faces again, back to their homes, they're reclaiming the properties, and there are some elements. I don't blame the majority entirely in everything that happens to the minorities. There are some elements who really do not want to see Kashmiri Hindus back. Whether the government is enabling Kashmiri Hindus to back there is immaterial. It depends on what majority feels and does about Kashmiri Hindus.
Yeah, those employees of Government of India, I mean, those who are under PM's package there, I mean, they are also humans. If they're not feeling safe and secure there, they should be transferred back. You can't just make them an example of a forced stay. Force can't be used. As I said, if they're not feeling safe and secure there, they must be transferred back to where they feel safe, because they are also humans and they have human rights. And the reasons why they're not feeling safe, India must address. Only when there is a peaceful environment prevailing in Kashmir, things can happen. And things can happen. It takes time. It needs patience. It needs pragmatism. It needs faith. It needs goodwill. And force doesn't bring results. The longer we use force, the higher we use force, it rebounds strongly, and everyone suffers. That's it. As after Ajayji said, yeah, I do supplement it. Thank you.
We have reached that point. I would like to really, I'm very, very grateful to the three panelists to for helping us begin one of the difficult conversations. This is just a beginning, and I hope we have more interactions, and some of you are motivated to engage with people that have different views on the topic of Kashmir. I thank all the people who've been here to listen and to all the questions that you submitted. There are a couple of questions that I left out because of the lack of time, and also they're more of personal nature, and hopefully, yeah, that's pretty much. I think there are 3-4 questions that Anuradha has already answered in other ways, and I thank all the participants in the Zoom, on the Zoom, and I also want to thank our backroom support, our executive director, Sunita Vishwanath, who's been behind the scene, and Prabodh Jamwal, who has been managing things here, and Harita Ishwara, who is a student and a part-time worker for Hindus for Human Rights, who has been the host for this event. Please do take a moment. It'll take just a moment to look at the evaluation form and give us some feedback, good, bad, indifferent, whatever. I think we can really use it. And hopefully people on the Zoom will do the same before they leave us tonight. Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Bill. And
Thank you.
Again, on behalf of everybody at Hindus for Human Rights. And see, now you see the photo of our executive director, Sunita, who canceled all other appointments to be with us today. Thank you and good night. If not today, please take the time. Please do donate to HFHR so we can continue to do this kind of work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the donation, do you have like a cash box?
There's no cash box, but you can capture if you have a phone, you can capture the code and that will take you to donation.
And I saw that you had some of the calendars. Can I take one? Because I missed my calendar.
Please.
I got one this year actually, and Sunita kindly sent it to me, but I gave it to a friend.
And you are?
I'm Lalita. I'm from Stanford.
Okay.
Yeah, Lalita Dupron, Center for South Asia. Stanford.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I need to work with you guys.
Yes, I'd love to. We did advertise this, but I'm wondering if we could perhaps co-sponsor or something. Yeah. Okay, good on Zoom. Okay.
On Zoom, and
We're not